Hey there, welcome to the Ryan Kingsline Show. My name's Ryan Kingsline, and in this podcast, we interview amazing artists, creatives, and creators to find out how they tick and how they got where they are today. So sit back, relax. I look forward to sharing their journey with you. All right. Thanks, guys, for joining me. We've got a small little crew in here. What is today? Wednesday is one of our off days, so we don't normally come in here. But Jeremy, man, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for trying a third time to make this happen.
I know, right? That's all
The
good.
time zones are crazy.
Yeah. Well, and the key thing here is this is out of your time. So, I appreciate any time you can give. So why don't we start with, the usual, just like, what do you do? You're a senior environment artist, and that usually just means not character. So
Yeah, basically, yeah.
A little more detail into that. What do you do?
So I'm a senior environment artist. I basically build environments. Like mainly in AAA, you're not really building the props per se.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the times I'm working with designers and level designers to try and make sure that the overall experience works for everyone. And like all of the features that the designers are building kind of all work together and then have like an environment to accompany them.
What's a designer?
A level designer?
Yeah, I guess. You
So,
said you work with designers, right?
Yeah, so designer can be anything from like building a feature in a game. Like, how would be the best way to explain this?
It's tough, right? I mean, that it's such an amorphous job description.
Yeah, it can be quite broad. It can be anything from like, so a designer can be designing crafting, for example, or like how a loot system works for an open world game. But level designers are primarily looking at the overall experience of like a single player mission or a space that has beats and how those move forward with each beat. Is this a downbeat, which is like no combat, or is this an upbeat, which has combat? And then I'm there to kind of build on top of that and push the experience forward visually and to help interpret their work. So it's like it's a big supporting role, basically. And we're all supporting each other.
Got it. And when we're talking about that, are we talking floors? Are we talking interior, exteriors? And the reason why I'm asking this is partly what's the angle for students? Because I know you actually do a lot of training too, and we're sitting here in a classroom full of students.
Right.
But do you focus on interior? Do you focus on exterior? Do you focus on terrain, texturing, substance?
So being a senior environment artist in AAA, you tend to specialize quite a bit. AAA in general kind of becomes more specialized. So like I was saying earlier, I'm not necessarily building the props, but I may suggest what props I might need and or would block them out and then hand that off to someone who is specialized in making props. But it's interesting because depending on the studios you're at, it can become quite open. And when I say open, I mean like they can kind of give you ownership over a lot of things. So as someone getting into the industry, you may be given really simple things, or you're given maybe medium difficulty things, but then you're supported by someone like myself. And then as you move forward and up into more of like a senior role, then you're being given a lot more like control over what you're doing. And so, for example, right now I would do like the layout of the space, maybe with a level designer to make sure that it's accommodating the game experience.
Right.
And then building out the space visually, buildings, terrain. Maybe I'll take a first pass on the lighting before giving it to the lighting team so that they can look at that and then kind of make their decisions. Because I'm not specialized in lighting, maybe I won't know how expensive I'm getting. So I'm more or less going for the overall visual look. Okay. And I'm like, oh yeah, that looks cool. And then I hand it over to the lighting team and then they tell me that it's way too expensive, but then they try and like incorporate it to look the same or close to what I was doing, but within the boundaries of the platforms that you're shipping on.
Has this been a shift that's happened recently where the senior environment artist, it almost sounds like you're a bit of you're a level designer as well, to a large extent?
It's become pretty broad. And so when I was in the US, I started in games in 2007. And from there, I was an environment artist from the beginning, but I wasn't given very much control. And I don't know if I want to say that's just kind of the work culture of the US. And then as you gain experience and your title becomes higher and higher, you go from intern to junior to mid-level, senior, expert. And there's a few others that can go up from there, depending on the company that you're at. But in the US, it's very structured. And where I'm at now in Sweden, it's much more about like everyone's just trying to make a good game. So if you're interested and you're eager and trust you, they're going to let you try it out and see how it goes.
Got it. And that's even at the junior position.
Yes, actually, yeah.
All right. So you've been doing this 12 years.
Yep. Yeah, it'll be 12 years later this year, which is really weird.
Do you ever sit back and think like, oh my God, I'm gonna be an old dude doing this, because
Oh, dude. Yeah. No, that's just how it is, right? We're just
we
all getting
started
older.
we started all young. I started this young, and now I'm like 45, and I'm like, oh crap.
Oh man, I didn't know that. You
Yeah.
don't come off as 45. That's good.
I am, and I'm looking around, and I'm like, is it still cool for a 45-year-old to be like doing this?
Oh, that's great. It's only when you become self-aware, then you're like, oh no.
Yeah, but thankfully, Avengers and Star Wars are all cool again, so we win.
Yes. Yeah, very true.
So what's been one of the biggest shifts that you've seen in the 12 years that you've been doing this?
I think is actually tools are starting to get out of the way, if that makes sense.
It does, actually. Yeah. Tell me more about that, though.
When I was going to school trying to get ready to become a dev, there wasn't any way to like talk to developers. When I graduated high school, I think it was 2004, and YouTube was just starting to be a word. And I think Polycount was the only way you could access anything as far as the industry is concerned, and maybe connect with people that are in games. And then the tools were like, I think it was 3ds Max for me. That was it. And I guess Bryce 3D and Rhino.
Yeah.
Like way back. And then as school was going, school switched from 3ds Max to Maya. And I was forced to switch with that. And then just because, you got to keep going, you got to do the education. So I was in Maya. And then when I got into my first internship, they were a mix of Max and Maya users. So I was like, oh, and so I'm starting to see like already, and this is quite early. This is 2000, that was 2007. And they're just like, both are developing on two different softwares, and they're kind of pushing the same content in the end into the game. And it just kept going that way. And then every studio I went to, it was like, okay, I can be in Max in this one. I can be in Max in this one. And then when I get to Sweden, they're just kind of all over the place. You've got people that are actually using Blender. You've got people that are using Maya, Max, Modo. I switched from Max to Modo. And that's when I started to realize like you have people chasing tools. I noticed this pretty early on with people that are learning 3D is they're chasing the tool. They're like, oh man, this tool's it's like the next big thing. And it's once you kind of get quite comfortable with a tool. Like I was pretty comfortable with 3ds Max because I think I was in it for like 5 years total before I switched to Modo. And that switch is quite quick. I think I was able to switch to Modo in like, I don't know, 2-3 weeks maybe, where I started to feel like I didn't need to go back to Max to do things that I couldn't figure out how to do in Modo. And that's when I realized like, oh man, the tools are all kind of the same. And it's more like mastering one tool is great because then you can just actually focus on the art craft and like making things look good. And if you're in that position, all that's happening is you're growing as an artist because another tool will come along. Maybe it'll make things faster. And if you learn that tool, it's just a matter of getting comfortable with it. It's like getting comfortable with like sculpting tools in the physical world, right? Mm-hmm. It's like once you understand that, you can see people that sculpt in real life switch to ZBrush and they have like a one up on people that are just learning through ZBrush. Totally. So they've got a lot of the classical learning behind it. So yeah, I think tools are just kind of getting out of the way and they're getting easier and easier to use. So you're starting to see people that are teaching themselves how to do game art from home through YouTube, and they're already getting internships with just a portfolio that already looks better than what I had when I got out of school. There's so many more resources and just everything is just better and easier. But yeah, I think just tools are getting out of the way, and the people that have a really good eye for art, or the people that learn like the fundamentals of art in general, start to just kind of click with stuff easier than everyone else.
That makes sense.
Just chasing a tool.
Yeah. Now, is there any tools that you think we must be chasing? And I ask because, yesterday I've opened Houdini many times and I've looked at Houdini and I've been like, oh, and then close it.
Yeah.
And last night I opened it and I played around in it and I was like, I'm in love. This is pretty awesome. And that's a tool that, you hear people talk about, and then you hear people talk about designer and all of that. So, are there some tools that we have to chase or no?
It's interesting because my personal view on Houdini is like, if it's you by yourself, it's very difficult to just use that by yourself at home. It doesn't have very many facets of opportunity, I guess, to help speed things up at home. I did a video recently on like creating a model in ZBrush, and then I've already set up the node structure in Houdini to you just give it the ZBrush file and it outputs in like a few seconds the low poly with the bake unwrapped and everything for you. So it just does it all.
You do the UVs as well?
It automatically.
Yeah, I've seen the
So
UV
it's doing everything automatic.
in Houdini, and it's like amazing. It's unbelievable.
But like when it comes to the development, when you use that in like a production situation, like at a studio where they're trying to build a world,
yeah,
that's when Houdini really shines. And I think the people that are shouting that Houdini is like the next amazing thing are the ones that see the benefit of what it does for like large scale production. Right. So a lot of games are going open world currently, and making those worlds is becoming difficult because they get really, really big. And any way that you can cut that pie to make it easier to eat, right? If you can have it create that content really quickly, it's going to be much better for everyone. And the game will look better. And yeah, it just becomes easier to develop a game on a large scale.
You're talking about procedural modeling and procedural terrain generation and things like that, right?
Yeah.
And wasn't Substance supposed to take care of that?
So Substance does a lot of the material aspect of it. And you're seeing like a huge boom currently in like material artists. Like they're all over the place. Yeah. I mean, Ben Wilson, for example, I don't know if you've spoke with him yet. That guy's materials look like photogrammetry scans.
Was Ben
his most recent stuff?
People to do this, or
no? So the first person that really like blossoms to the public, it's really weird because developers never used to get like the limelight.
Yeah.
And now we're kind of becoming more, I wouldn't call us superstars, but people start to recognize the name like a specific artist, right? Josh Lynch really stuck out.
Yeah.
He kind of is like the tip of the spear, and essentially it's kind of molded the how everything is kind of moved forward. And like Ben Wilson, for example, he's really good. Daniel Theiger is also insanely good.
Yeah.
And I really like Daniel's stuff because he's thinking outside of the box. So he's someone that looks like he's taking Substance and using it for like material research and development. Like he's just kind of making stuff up.
Oh, nice.
But
getting in there and playing because he knows.
He's playing.
He's thinking like Substance.
Right. And it's interesting because that it's relatively new still. I would say it's just now the ripples in the water are starting to calm down. And it's really kind of taken a hold, and it's its own department now in large scale games. And I mean, even outsourcing as well as like just generating large libraries of materials is quite profitable, actually.
You mean from a content creator perspective, or do you mean within a studio?
Both. I mean, so within a studio now you can become a material artist or a surface artist.
Yeah.
All the studios kind of have different names, which is a sign that the department is quite young. So everyone's kind of coming up with names for how they think it'll work in their production. Yeah. But then when it comes to like freelance, you can make large libraries and put them on Gumroad or put them on ArtStation and in their store feature and just start going to town on it. And people buy the stuff by the boatloads.
Awesome. That's something we interviewed James Raitosa a while ago, and he did a class. And the thing do you know James Raitosa?
I'm not sure.
Okay, so he's got
how do you spell his last name? I need to know this now.
Rito. I'll just go to James.
I was like, I put you on the spot with the name.
Yeah, right. Damn it, I'm an artist.
It's like, don't ever do math on stream. It's dangerous.
Totally.
It's really dangerous. Yeah. Oh, yes. Okay, yes.
So he's over at 3-4. He was set to go to college and bypassed college and went straight to, it wasn't high res. Maybe it was high res. But anyways, he got right in as a texturing job, and he interned at a Allegorithmic. And then next thing you know, like early 20s, 343 Industries, no need for college. He's making his bank now. I don't know how much he's making, but he's in 5. He's doing good.
He's doing good. Yeah. 343 is they take care of their people.
Yeah. And this is all he does. He creates these materials, does all this. Before this, he had a whole library of Gumroads of materials, and he was just selling them for like $1 a piece. But it was he's just using that to get his name out there and help people see what he could do. And then that landed him at 343 Industries. But the crazy part was no college, just, he did an internship, so that probably helped. But beyond that, just working his ass off, learning this stuff and doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause it really is about, so it's interesting because like, I won't ever talk badly about schools, but schools give you the opportunity and the time to sit there and practice the craft, right?
Right.
And if you can find that time and are self-driven to do that at home, it's essentially the same thing. And then the only thing that you're missing is feedback from your peers,
Right.
which is like one of the main reasons I had started the community that I have. And then I assume why you're doing what you do is like you give people a space and they do what they do. And the ones that are self-determined will just open right up.
Yeah, and I'm kind of on the other side of that because I will gladly talk badly about schools.
Yeah,
because for me they fail artists, and I take it personal because as an artist and as somebody who I was a night restocker at Costco. I worked in a bookstore. I worked in a coffee shop. I bagged groceries. I was a roofer in Kansas for a day and got heat stroke.
Oh my gosh.
That was not fun. Do not be a roofer in Kansas on your first day of summer coming from Alaska. Definitely not the ideal thing. But college doesn't prepare people, I think, for the financial and the skill base. And it's not their fault. It's for me, I know why. It has to do with the regulations and the structures and, there's reasons. So no fault of theirs. It's just problematic. That done and said, though, you do have an incredibly dynamic community. So tell me more about that, because we've got a couple of questions. I think Josiah wanted me to ask you some questions about your work and some of that. So I'll dive into that. But for those who don't know, Jeremy, if you look here, you can just Google this URL, Dynasty here, and you guys can learn more about it. But you have a really dynamic community going on.
Yeah, that got crazy. I was not anticipating it to go that direction. So
it's one of the most dynamic out there, actually. I mean, I'm in several Discords, and yours is just awesome.
Really active. Like we've got people giving critiques that are like pages long. People are even making PDFs now because it's easier to send a PDF link with feedback. So can we link the Discord?
Do you want? I don't know if I have.
I can just as long as that is all right. I can do that.
Totally. I mean, this is thanks for that. Here we go. Yeah, we can go straight to the site. Oh, you got a URL for it too. That's right. I forgot about that one.
Yeah, it makes it a lot easier. And we have a podcast now too, which is being ran by Alex Bedoz. He really wanted to make a podcast. I'm like, man, I wish I had more hands because I would love to make a podcast too.
Yeah.
And there's just no way. So they're really interesting because conversations come up. It's just fun. But yeah, this thing that we call the Empire, which was coined by them, by the community, was just me starting to stream again. I streamed, I think in 2009, I started streaming. It was before Twitch really took off. I think I was streaming on Blip TV and I was streaming StarCraft. So I was playing a lot of StarCraft. I was really into the whole community aspect of it. And I saw a big community behind StarCraft. And so I was like, all right, I'll just stream. How do I do this? I'm going to stream in the mornings. So I started streaming in the mornings and I was like, I'm not streaming long enough and I want to do it for more time.
Yeah.
So I started waking up Monday through Friday, 3 hours early to stream before getting ready for work. And I was already working on Shadow of Mordor at the time. So I was very busy. So I'm doing that for 3 hours in the morning with commentary the whole time and then going to work. Oh yeah. So that's War in the North. That's some of the older stuff. After that, I stopped because I got really like into what was happening at work. And then when I got the opportunity to work in Sweden, there was a little bit of downtime when I was waiting for the work visa. And so I started streaming art again. And then fast forward to being in Sweden, the work-life balance here is really good. The government limits legal amounts of overtime, which is quite interesting. So with all this free time, I was like, oh man, I need to start like trying to push my skill.
You're talking to a game artist when they say the lack of overtime gives you free time.
Oh, dude.
Because other people just call that my time, normal.
Yeah,
time.
It's like your lifetime.
Yes.
Yeah, dude, it's so true. So I've got all this free time all of a sudden, which is what you're supposed to have, right? Outside of work.
Yeah.
And I decided that I was going to start streaming to force myself to work on my skills outside of work. So I was like, all right, I'll do something that is kind of uncomfortable and it'll force me outside of my safety basket, if you want to call it that. And I just kept kind of going. And some people were showing up in chat and then people started regularly showing up. And then I noticed even when I wasn't streaming, that they were in the Twitch chat talking to each other.
Mhm.
So then I was like, all right, I'll just make a Discord, and a few people joined that, and then it just started climbing. And at first it was quite slow, and I think it was January we hit 2,000 people,
That's
and
great.
it had already been running for like 2 years.
Hmm.
I want to say 2 years.
Yeah.
And now we're about to pass 3,000. So it's gone from 2,000 over the course of like a little over 2 years
Hmm.
to from January to now gaining another 1,000. So now it's like really like scaling up. And yeah,
So
and it's crazy how many industry people are in there.
that's
Like
actually one of the
at
things I
least
thought was,
at least 100 devs at
okay.
least.
Yeah, that I thought was very powerful because I heard about it from Chris, Mr. Rads.
Oh yeah, Chris Radsby, yeah.
Yeah. So I did an interview with Chris, because I was looking at his level 80 level. I always say level 80 level. And I was looking at one of his tutorials where he just builds these things super fast. And I'm like, my environment artists have to see this and have to talk to this guy.
Dude, that
And
guy works smart for
oh
sure.
God. And beautifully, like, I just love you can see it all. It's great. So he started talking about you and your podcast and your Discord and all that stuff. And he's like, I'm in there and I'm commenting and, all that. So that's just, to me, that's a wonderful thing. But now the question is, you don't teach either, and you don't have any Gumroads that I know of, do you?
Well, I started doing mentorships, but I don't really have any Gumroads, no.
Yeah. And then where do you do your mentorships?
That is through the Gumroad, but I only display them when they're open.
Right.
So they disappear rather quickly. So like after this call, I have to do some feedback videos that I'll push to them as well. So I started doing that, and that's really fun. It feels good, man. It feels right to show people stuff.
Good. And that's what that was my next question, because, you have a good work life. I'm sure the place that you're at pays you quite well. So, it doesn't sound like that's about the money or any of that. So what's the important part of teaching for you?
So right now I'm a senior, and I have an interest in leading a team at some point.
Yeah.
Just because I feel like I could do better for the team if I can just chase things for them and make sure that they have everything that they need in order to push themselves as far as they can go. So by doing the mentorships, it also benefits me because I have to learn how to talk to people. I don't think I have too much of a problem with that. I'm very like open and maybe a little over conversational, but it helps me learn how to talk to people that receive what I'm saying differently. So I have to like cater what I'm saying to support the way that they're learning.
That's
so
great.
If I can learn that stuff, that will really help me whenever the lead opportunity arises, because then I can lead a team and then be able to listen to all the people that I'm leading and understand where they're coming from and be able to communicate in a level that makes sense to each person. Because you can't just like blanket a statement and expect it to hit everyone the same way.
That's actually one of the rewarding things for me, is figuring out people's brains and what they need next.
It's forced me to be very analytical as well, like really analyzing what they're showing me and trying to break it down.
Good point, because when you're doing it as an artist, because I run into this even with the artists that teach classes with me, sometimes they can't really explain things well. They can demo it, but they can't explain it. It's different when you have to explain it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Like tangent lines, and like when stuff is too close to other stuff, like why does that feel weird? It's like, well, I don't know why it feels weird, but it feels weird. Don't do that.
Exactly. Versus maybe when you have to explain it to somebody, you have to provide some theory. You have to talk about composition. You got to talk a little bit about how people perceive, what do linear elements mean to somebody who's perceiving them. One of the things we talk a lot about in the boot camp is just bevels, and how just bevels in and of themselves and props can make somebody think, well, this is a cheap knockoff, or this is a toy, or it's authentic. And just getting to authenticity is like its own special craft.
Yeah, based on the bevel size and whatnot.
Yeah. And
bevels are crazy.
Like you got here with the welds, and you got different bevels here. Like this looks very authentic to me. But if you don't get the merger of these things in there, then it looks like basically it's some kid's toy.
Yeah, there are very specific elements that you have to nail, which is why reference is so important. And it's so funny because when I think about it, when I go back in time, I'm like, man, everyone that was ever trying to teach me anything was always like, just bathe in references, just drown yourself in it. Because when you look at stuff that's in 3D, it's digital, right? So there's already this weird kind of disconnect.
Mm-hmm.
And the only thing that makes it connect with you as if it's more real is the subtleties that exist with the things that we've looked at our whole lives. Like, you know what a pipe looks like. You know what like what a door looks like when it's attached to a building, and just how stuff is structured together. And it's those subtleties and even the things that are on the subconscious level, which is why I think PBR is so powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Like roughness. Roughness is adding subtlety in the way that lighting is perceived across the surface
Mm-hmm.
for every pixel that exists in that roughness map. So like any details that you can push through there to break it up, like tricks your brain into thinking how real it is. So looking at reference is insanely important.
That's a good point. In fact, that way, and let me look up one of my students' works, Cody. This one of the teachers had this crit for Cody. Let me find, that's his new project. Here you go. All right. So one of the people that came in, they gave a crit on this. Let me just move that off to the side. There we go. And they were talking about, like we were just saying, about the linearness of this and nothing kind of breaking it up or changing its shape. It's a little bit too linear, and it's all leading us down into this kind of, nowhere.
Yeah, it's leading you to that corner. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's basically nothing there. I think in the concept there was, you could see through. And so there was like a terrain, there was something back there for the eye to look at.
All right. Yeah. So it was all pointing there to begin with.
Yeah. And then the comment that was had on this is that all of these vines, they're all the same. Relatively.
Yeah, they don't kind of vary too much in length. There are a few spots.
Yeah, and there's the same amount in shade as there is in the light. And
right.
I think it would grow more in the light than it would in the shade.
Yes.
And I missed that as a crit. And I was sitting there thinking, well, of course, that's logical. I get that now. But you're in the mix, and from doing environments, I mean, he's worked on this for a long ass time. A lot of moving parts. You miss stuff like that.
Yeah, and that's when it comes to like the community that you surround yourself with to like point out these things before they've gone too far and like they're ready to be done with it. Because I know exactly what that feels like. You work on a scene for way too long and you're like, okay, I need to be done with this, even if it's not as good as it could be.
Yeah, you just got to move. So there's not a lot of work here for 12 years. Tell me about that.
I've been scraping stuff away. So I've left some stuff here, but like Shadow of Mordor, I left before that shipped, so I don't feel comfortable like saying that I worked on that game.
Okay, interesting.
Very much, other than I was part of it at one point in time.
Okay.
But I guess I just put stuff on there when ArtStation started to take shape, and then I haven't posted personal art on here so much more than like that cobblestone breakdown. Yeah, with the Division 2, those are some of the more recent stuff that I was working on. I do actually need to post more Division 2 stuff. Like everyone's like, dude, when are you going to post more stuff? And I'm just like, I'm not even really I think maybe it's because of where I'm at now. Being a senior, I feel comfortable and I'm more interested in like pushing myself artistically and then in my personal life, and then making sure that the community that I'm running are all being pushed. The goal is like, okay, let's make them better and try and get them jobs.
Yeah.
Like I can't directly be like, you should go work there or you should work there. What I want to do is have you choose where you want to work and then help you cater what you're doing to head in that direction.
That's great.
But yeah, I definitely need to post some more Division 2 stuff because there's a bunch, dude. There's like, I don't know, 100 photos.
Oh my God.
And I think there's only like 4 in that, or 4 or 5 in that first one.
Okay. Yeah. That is great. That's with the boot camp. That's exactly in fact, I mean, I feel like we're kind of, we're on the same wavelength there, because it's like jobs have been my thing for artists since I've been doing this. That's the problem I have with traditional education, is it's just not job focused for artists. It's like flighty kind of stuff. It's like, go experience this. So it's like the one hippy dippy area of traditional education. But at the end of the day, this is a job. People you're going to be talking to execs on some level or another. Execs are going to be there deciding what they need from you on one level or another, whether or not you're talking with them or not. They're the one making some element of decision that's going to affect the art director and everybody else below them, because they're the money people. So, they're going to have desires. They're going to have things that they need you to do. And that's the thing that's kind of missing, and I think is really cool about what you do. And a lot of these people I see you doing mentorships now on Gumroads, which is really awesome. I wish that was around.
Yeah, it's really blown up.
Yeah, it's great. There was a time when I started ZBrush workshops 10 years ago, it's like that was it. I knew of no other online training outs that wasn't monthly subscription that was doing these online classes. And this is great to see this out there and get that stuff there. So what do you think people need to get jobs now? Like, what is the things you're focused on to get them jobs?
I really like storytelling. If you can build a scene that speaks volumes about something going on, even though it's a still image, that's everything.
Somebody who posted in your community, I forget his name, and he was in the podcast Jeremy with Chris. He had a substance, like a skull and crossbones on a plane, and he had some kind of like gobo of a figure animated, projected on there. Does that ring a bell at all?
That does not. Dude, I look at so much stuff now.
Oh, I believe it.
It's a blur.
Yeah, but it came along because Chris said the same thing of story. And so it came up like, how do you make a story out of substance designer materials? And
right.
There was this guy who just put like skull, crossbones, substance designer material, and then he had like this weird shadowy dude projected onto it, and it looked really cool. And you had a story. Boom.
Oh yes, I remember this now. Yes. Yeah, see, I remember it now that you're starting to describe it. The shadowy figure.
Yep.
Like cements it in your mind. So that's the story element, right? And when it comes to substance materials as well as propping, I like to think about a space as like, okay, you need to have a story here, right? But what is that story? Maybe you don't know yet because the narrative team hasn't. It's Dirk. Oh, thank you.
Thanks,
Dirk's awesome. Dirk actually does really good critiques, like super spot on. But I was saying propping a scene or materials, if you want to put a story there, maybe narrative team doesn't have the story yet, or you don't know what you want to have as a story, but you know you want to have maybe like a garage scene with like a bunch of tools. So you know which way to go. So you build that scene. If you think about it in real life, stories happen in spaces that exist. So you can build a scene like a garage with like workshop tools and add the story later. You can layer that on top. And then that adds so much because it tells you, the story tells you where props could be or why something is where it's at. Everything starts to have like a reason or a meaning behind why it's where it is. And everything looks so much more intentional because of it. And then I actually get to see how you're thinking by the way you've placed props because of the story you're trying to tell. That's why storytelling is big. The second thing I would say is probably just making sure that the scale of your assets is accurate. So you want to make sure a stool can fit under a table, right? If it looks like they don't mesh together, then I immediately have this issue with where the artist is coming from. Like, do they not realize like that soda can is like a paint can size? The scale is super important.
And I saw the other day on your stream, you were learning Blender.
Oh yeah. That's another endeavor that's just recently started to occur.
The thing that caught me about that I thought was really kind of cool was you're just on that stream learning. It's not like you're showing off. It's not like you got something to present. And it's just, you're on the stream and you're like, and people are telling you what to do and you know what to do. And, there's a back and forth, like remember that button and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And,
it's like you're in a lab in a school and people are around you.
That's a neat way to look at that.
It feels good, man. Cause like the main reason I'm doing it that way is obviously I don't have too much time outside of like when I'm not streaming, I'm not doing art at home because there's too many things going on. So when I'm streaming, that's when I'm doing art. And so if I want to learn Blender, it's going to happen on stream. And so the exciting part about that is you get to see that a person with 12 years of industry experience is like a human. Like we're human. Like, I don't care how long I've been in games. Like when you do something that you're not used to, you're going to look dumb and it's okay.
That's great.
Yeah.
Does that affect your ability to create? Because I had a similar thing myself, like where I was starting my business and it was just like I was crazy busy with students and I was crazy busy. And the only time I had to actually create my own artwork, if I wasn't teaching or helping another artist teach, was while I was teaching the students something. Like I could pick some classes where I could go in and actually just sculpt my own stuff. But at a certain point, that started to weigh me down, and the critic, and some of the work just needed me to go deeper than I could in a hour long session.
Yeah, I get that for sure. There are definitely issues where like I can't go as far as I want to go because I only got 2 hours.
Yeah.
And then that's only on Mondays. So on Thursdays, it's 4 portfolio reviews that have to happen inside of an hour and then an hour of Discord critiques. So like I'm only doing personal art for maybe 2 hours a week. So it's the window is very small. And so by doing something like learning Blender, I feel like I'm improving something that I want to do.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, we've got people that are in that chat or in the stream that weren't doing 3D like a few months ago. And now because I'm streaming Blender, they can follow along and they're learning a whole lot more, like at an accelerated pace.
Right.
Because it's like they're experiencing it with me in real time. Like that's just crazy to me.
We've talked a little bit about what you think people need to do. And you said make sure they create story. One of the things you like about the changes in our industry is, you don't really have to chase tools. It really is more about the art itself. But along those lines, and you said AAA, you don't do a lot of propping in AAA, but sometimes that's maybe a junior position for somebody as they're kind of building their career to get to where you are. So my question's kind of along those lines. Like, what do people need to have in their portfolio? Because a lot of times when I interview people, yourself, Chris, there's the emphasis on story. And you guys have all created like large environments, but sometimes people are just starting out there.
Yeah, that can be pretty daunting.
Yeah, they're not there. It'll take them 3 to 4 months to create an environment.
Right. Yeah,
what do we need to have?
So I would say start an art station, right?
Yes.
Even if you're just getting started. I mean, if you're uncomfortable posting in there, the goal is to have a community to go to that you can post in. And when people start reacting to it really well, then you start posting it on your art station. Now, I would say starting with props is probably the best because that forces you to work on the fidelity and the detail.
Yeah.
Of like a single asset, which is much easier to approach than an entire environment. Let's say you do a prop, I don't know, when you're first starting, maybe a prop a month. And then if you can go faster than that, start, scaling it down to like, see if you can do a prop in 3 weeks or 2 weeks. And when I say do a prop, I mean, just model it. Don't worry about texturing. Just execute on creating the asset, like recreating the asset in 3D. So you're looking at reference, recreating it and repeating that over and over. Then you start learning about materials, get that onto your assets, and then start posting that on your art station. So I would say start with props. The end package is like a fully textured, either in Marmoset or Substance Painter, an end result asset. Once you're comfortable doing that, I think moving on to environments is probably the next big thing. Now, this is if you want to be an environment artist. If you don't want to be an environment artist and you just want to be a prop artist, then you just keep making props. And you just make sure that they're accurate, the scale is good, and the materials are really interesting to look at. But if you want to be an environment artist, that's when it starts to get a little complicated, right? Because you're managing composition. You have to build a larger scene, which requires a lot of props, tends to require you to understand lighting and composition, like I was saying, and interesting angles and just making a scene. And then, like I was saying, with story and it just goes on. And that scares people. If I had to give a suggestion for that transition from props to environments, I would suggest continue making props, but props that are related to each other. So like the garage scene I was talking about, maybe you start to make props that would be in like a mechanic's garage.
Right.
So you're not worrying about the scene. You're just looking at the props. And as you make that library of props, then you're like, oh, maybe I'll make a table. And now you have a table to put your props on. Then you just need a wall. And it's totally okay if it's like a brick wall that is just downloaded from a website that offers either free materials or you were able to buy. That's acceptable because you're trying to ease the struggle of building your first environment. And even today, like that's totally okay to be using like I buy Josh Lynch materials if I could and put those on my walls because I don't want to have to deal with walls. I want to deal with like the composition and the layout and telling stories and stuff. But yeah, I think starting with props and then the transition into environments is through props that are related to each other, and then just start putting them in a scene together and you basically have an environment. And there's also dioramas that you could do if you want to keep it contained and small. Do you want me to answer the questions that are in chat?
I want to do that. And then actually, before we do that, I want to look at Nicholas's work because he kind of represents a part of that question. So Nicholas just got a job over at ZeniMax. And,
Oh, nice.
And so here's this project he's been on. He's like, I'm still going to finish this project. I'm like, dude, you're done with the project. Got you a job. Chill. Go home and relax.
Oh, dude. Yeah, I have some comments on that when when we transition.
No, feel free. What are your thoughts on that?
Okay.
Or what?
So we actually talked about this on stream recently as well. So you have this drive to keep pushing to make a sick portfolio, and you keep pushing, and you're working really hard, and then you get a job, right? Maybe you get an art test, you pass the art test, you work really hard on that as well, pass the interview, you get the job. Now you're at the studio. There's this mentality, it's in everyone. I had it as well. To prove yourself, you have to keep pushing. And you have to maintain this speed that you had when you were outside of the industry. And you have to remember that you passed the art test. They're offering you money now. You've actually you've proven yourself already, and that's why they want you there. And so I would strongly suggest, at least for the first 6 months, to try and get back to a normalcy of relaxing when you get home, hanging out with friends, going out for a drink, playing games. It's really important to reward yourself for the hard work of actually getting in, because it can be real difficult for some people, and that difficulty makes it even worse once you're in.
What if they find out I'm a fraud?
Oh man, that's so wait, you're saying like, say I got in and I feel like I'm a fraud? Is that what you would mean?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, isn't that kind of part of what happens there? Is we get in, we get a job, we're like, I don't know how I got this, because I've been turned down 20,000 times, and now finally somebody said yes, and I got to prove myself so they don't realize who I really am.
That's the hard part. That's the hard part, is you have to break that yourself. I don't know if anyone can convince you otherwise other than yourself.
Yeah,
because it's difficult, man. Yeah, it's difficult. I remember it's what causes new people to go into overtime so easily, is they just want to be the best. They want to push themselves. And it's like, dude, you're now, like, no matter what studio you're at, that everyone around you, they're always going to be better than you. That's just how it is. And instead of worrying about, I'm not good enough, like, turn the focus towards exposing yourself to everything that's around you, because all that'll happen is you'll get better and better. And you'll always surround yourself with people that you find are inspiring and can push you to the next level. And just don't worry about the fact is, because I'll straight up say we all suck. We all suck, and that's just how it is. And we just get better and better. But we'll always be in a crappier position if there's someone above us, if we look at it that way. The person above you should be inspiring you to push yourself upwards, not making you feel bad about yourself.
Yeah. And I think Edison's actually a really good case in point for where this question is going. Because for me, Edison is there. He's ready. He's got what it takes. I mean, now he's getting into Speed Tree, and, he's done props. Here, let me just get over to Edison's art station. There we go. All right. So,
dude, that's a sick phone.
Oh, you see the phone. Good. Okay. Edison, I seriously hate these folders in ArtStation. There we go.
Yeah, dude, that's one thing I always tell people, is to just give me your ArtStation. Because, like, if you're giving me a link to the ArtStation theme, all I do is spend the time cutting your name out of the URL and moving it to the back so that I can have a familiar layout.
Yeah. Yeah,
because I just want to look at your art. I don't really mind that it's on ArtStation or anything. I just want to look at what you're making.
Yeah, that makes sense. And for me, I look at this, I'm like, Edison's got he's got the skills.
Yeah, this looks good.
Crazy good phone. And then let me see if I can find his building. All right, this is not finished yet. I don't think this is finished yet, right, Edison? But anyways, there's the
oh man.
There's the yeah. Ooh, look at that. It's like,
yeah, that looks nice.
This is gorgeous. Come in here. He's done trim sheets. He's got materials. He's got, a million different things in here. But Edison, correct me if I'm wrong, you're still looking to build some more. Oh, this building is rush work, he says.
Well,
But this,
does
how
it
do you
say how long?
how do you shake the tree? Tell us how long it is. And how do you shake the tree and tell people they're ready? Or get them to see that, it's like you could go and you could learn forever. Because I think that's what I heard you say is you could just be there learning forever and ever. And you can always see somebody who's better and something else you got to learn. But you
I
got to
mean,
stop.
yeah. I mean, and the other thing too is it doesn't really stop, and you just have to accept that you're either learning or you're not learning. But whenever you pick it back up, you're learning again.
Fair enough. But how do
And
you
being in
give
work, you're
yourself
always learning as well.
how do you give yourself permission to just be like, okay, I'm ready to apply? What do you say to people who are like, I got to wait. I'm not ready yet.
If they don't think they're ready, and I'm saying they're ready, if they can't hear that someone with man, it sounds weird to say it like that. Someone with my experience to say you're ready, and then for you not to hear that just means that you're having a hard time accepting. And it's just like, we need to get you into a community where everyone's shouting, you need to apply to this place, you need to apply to this place. Because like
I like that.
It's the community, right?
Mm-hmm.
Again, the community pushes you to outside of your comfort zone, and maybe that outside of your comfort zone's like applying to studios. Because at some point you actually have to start learning how to do interviews as well.
Right. Yeah. And the art tests, doing a bunch of those.
Yeah, man, I hate art tests.
Why does our industry do that? I mean, a friend of mine, Melissa, she's a sucker punch. She was at Naughty Dog for 10 years. Like 10 years. She had to do 2 art tests. What?
Really?
Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah, art tests are weird. I feel like art tests need to be a tool that you use when their portfolio is not answering the question.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at their portfolio, it's either it works, it doesn't work, or you just want to check one thing. And you should have an art test that very specifically checks the one thing. Because like art tests burn people, man. And then you might not even get the job. And then it's like, what the hell?
Yeah. That was a month. Like I saw Naughty Dog's art test. That does, I mean, Jesus,
Yeah, that one's pretty classic at this point.
Yeah, that's intense. All right, Mark's got a question. He's saying, I'm working on Unity, interactive VR. He's got a lot of props, wants to create an awesome environment. Any tips for somebody who's wanting to texture a lot of props, terrain in an efficient way? And I know that's hugely open-ended, so just however it hits you is fine.
I don't really have very much experience with VR, but I assume that VR is slightly budgeted. I mean, Epic kind of showed us that it's not too tough with their, what was that? Their robot game, the VR robot shooting game. Forget what it's called. Anyways, visually, that game is stunning. So I think VR is where it's at as long as you've got the beast computer. When it comes to props, I think keeping your draw calls down is important. And I don't know how familiar people are with draw calls. So if you've got an asset that's got 5 shaders on it and it's like 5 meshes to make the prop, that would be 5 draw calls. If you can get everything on one material and it's all happening on one mesh for that prop, that's 1 draw call. So keeping your draw calls down will help. And then tileable materials on the terrain is probably the way to go. I guess it's keeping the shaders not too complex. So you probably don't want to be doing blending, like material blending. See, then again, though, I don't know VR very much. Maybe it can support it. Maybe it's not as expensive. Yeah, see, I don't know how expensive decals are for VR. VR is a different beast for me.
Let's just assume, general games, if you wanted to do these things quickly, decals is tileable terrain, and then you can throw decals and props and
definitely, yeah.
Set dress.
Yeah, decals are amazing. So it's like being able to break up a tileable material with a few decals goes a much longer way than trying to solve how to make the terrain look unique while still using tileables. And detail normals. I was recently talking about that on the stream as well. Detail normals are insanely useful.
Okay.
And they should be on everything. And that's just another normal map that's tiling at like a higher frequency so that when you get close to a prop, the material's surface kind of holds up. Yeah. So if it's like metal, when you get really close to it, even though it's maybe say it's shiny metal, it's quite reflective. You get up close to it and there's scratches in it. Those scratches could be a detail normal, which is tiling quite high. So then those scratches, even though it's like right in front of your face, is holding up the fidelity, even though the main normal map has now gotten really low res because it's so close to the camera. Yeah, detail normals, man.
Tony, just Google, what would be a good Google for somebody to learn decals? You couldn't do texturing decals. Do you have a quick explanation for decals? I mean, really just alphas, something projected on the surface?
Yeah, it can be either a projected decal, which is like, it's like imagine taking an image and projecting it directly onto the assets that it comes in contact with.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be great for if you needed to do graffiti on a brick wall and there's pipes in the way, the graffiti will kind of wrap itself around the pipes as well. And then there's mesh decals, which are same solution, but instead of it projecting, it's just on like, say, a card, for example. I think Star Citizen's probably a good example of mesh decals being used really intensely and well. Those guys are using it a lot. So they're actually not even doing very much normal map baking of the actual ships themselves. They're just placing a ton of decals and beveling their ships to hold the weighted normals. Yeah.
I'll have to look that up. I didn't know that. I know a couple of people work there. Okay. What's the UV budget for a prop?
Oh, that's interesting. It depends how big the prop is.
You mean real world scale size? How big?
Yeah, like physical size. So like for buildings, for example, if you're doing a modular building, a building piece will have its UV set that is for textile density.
Yeah.
So it's to maintain the resolution across the entire asset. And then maybe the second UV set is for either light maps or any unique packed mask properties that you want to apply to the surface of that said piece. So your AOs would go in there, your any unique normal bakes would go in there, and any masks. So like roughness variation or brightness or saturation changes can happen in that as well. So I would say on average, it's 2 when it gets big like that. Your average prop has just 1 UV set. And if there's light maps, a second UV set.
Cool. All right. Well, Jeremy, man, thank you so much for coming in. And third time was a charm. So that's great.
Yeah, dude. Thanks for being patient.
I appreciate this. I really do. And I love all the stuff you're doing. So thank you so much.
Oh, thanks, dude.
All right. So I want to thank you so much for being here, for taking the time, and for listening to this podcast. And I want to ask a couple of things from you. Number one, make sure you leave a comment or you rate this on iTunes, Stitcher, wherever it is that you're getting this. That's going to make a big difference in helping us get the word out and get people to know who we are. All right. The other thing is I want to make sure you know where to find us. So you can head over to www.gameartinstitute.com where you can learn about our flagship program, which is the Game Artist Bootcamp. This is designed for those who are really looking to move the needle on their career and really lock in that job. You may have gone to school and learned a bunch, maybe haven't learned a bunch. But at the Game Art Institute, the primary focus we have is the very specific industry skills, the triggers that you really need to hit in that job interview. What are the specific things that they're looking for? That's what we're going to be training you on. We're taking applications right now for environment artists and for character artists. So make sure you head over to www.gameartinstitute.com and apply today. That way we can have that conversation, make sure this is a fit for you, make sure that you're a fit for it, and if everything is perfect, then we will sign you up for that right away and get you into your training and start moving the needle on your career. All right, thank you so much again for being here. Take care, have an amazing day.